Welcome, everyone, to another beautiful episode of Play to Rise podcast. I am Ava Ora, and we are here today with Shylo Don, Akashic Records expert who also has an Akashic Records Academy. And we are really here to dive into this topic, give you guys a really clear background of what is the Akashic Records and answer some really common questions on this topic as well. And then it's going to be a really interesting discussion because we're also going to be bringing in DiYeena of the Pleiadian family, whom I channel as well. And then we're going to kind of switch roles a little bit, and Shylo will kind of take the reins on asking some questions to the Pleiadians to see what they have to say on not only the Akashic Records, but the living Ma, which is a spiral of knowledge that in the past, DiYeena has kind of hinted that there may be some correlation, similarity, maybe they're the same between the Akashic Records and the living Ma. So we really want to just kind of have an open conversation around these topics and really kind of get to understand what it is that this is and how it can really help you in your life and how you can use it in your own world. So welcome, Shylo. It's so great to have you here on this episode. I mean, we are always on the episodes all together, but it's just so good to be in this container with you again.
Absolutely. It's always such a pleasure to be here and get to be in our channels together and really just have these beautiful, potent conversations and getting to bring DiYeena in as well. And this is one that I'm really excited to dive into because it is what we're channeling, right? We're tapping into the living Ma in this space. We've been channeling Gaia through the Akashic Records in this space. And so this is just a deeper understanding of, okay, well, what is all of this? And what are some of the big questions that people have around the Akashic Records and also the living Ma? And I know DiYeena is going to have so much to say about it as well, which is always like the cherry on top and the icing on the cake when we get to have these conversations. And so I'm excited. Let's dive in.
All right, awesome. I'm excited too. So let's just start at the basics here because I mean, I actually don't really know a lot about the Akashic Records personally. I mean, you've maybe given me a session or two along the way, and so I have experiential knowledge of it. But we have a lot of listeners here that maybe aren't too familiar with it. I mean, we have a lot of people that probably have heard the term before, but to really dive into just the basics of what are the Akashic Records.
Yes, of course. So the Akashic Records are, you can think of them as like the library of your soul. Like every word, thought, action, deed, emotion, feeling, experience that you've had in every single lifetime is stored in an energetic storehouse of information. And so you have the ability to go in and tap in and tune into this space where all of this information resides. And you might ask, well, like, why is that important? Why is that so powerful? Well, we can, when you just even think of things that have happened in our childhood, right? We tend to create different personas or identities or carry belief systems that are really not serving us in where we're going or in this next, say, iteration of who you desire to be. And so the beautiful thing about the Akashic Records is you can go in and tap into, okay, what experiences have I had? And what has been hardwired into my system through belief systems or even stored energetic trauma or things that have happened through many different lifetimes that you can then go in and start to clear out that information that's stored in the DNA, in the bones, in the cellular memory, right? In your subtle bodies, in the energetics, in your chakra systems. There's so many different access points to it. And so it's a beautiful space to not only go in and do deeper healing and also go through some deep initiations, but also tune into, okay, well, how have I been training lifetimes for this specific lifetime? And what information can I also gather about my gifts and my power and my purpose and mission here as well? And so there's so much, it's literally an infinite amount of information that's stored in that space. And it's really here to serve you. And so it's like I like to call it, if we look at like a deep soul exploration of really diving into understanding self on a soul level.
That's so fascinating. And I've got so many questions that are coming up to the surface that I'm sure others are having as well that aren't necessarily on script here. So I'm just going to go with the first one that's coming up here for me, and which is just wanting to know if you're clearing these things out of your system, and we can look at the laws of the universe here, and kind of like look at how these all weave together. But just even looking from the universal laws of energy is always changing, but it's never going away, right? It's always just moving into a new form. And just this thought of it shifting into a new pattern or a new dimension, or it's like, where does this energy go if we're moving it out of our bodies or moving it out of this location, and it's stored in this infinite well of information, and we are part of that information? It just raises this almost perhaps unanswerable question even of how this all even works, right? On the kind of cosmic level of how interconnected our bodies are to the grand mind, right? To the one heart, to it all, and how this information is really continuously weaving in and informing all of creation. And I guess I don't really have a question in that, but it did kind of raise that energy of like, wow, that you're saying how we're moving this energy, and then it's just continuing to somehow still inform the whole.
Mm. Yeah, it's learning how to tap in and being your own alchemist, right? Really tuning into, okay, how can we look at the inner alchemy of what is ready to go through this alchemical process within us.
Mm.
And I believe as well that as we're tapping into the Akashic records, right, that those a lot of those timelines can be, and yes, it's free will, and we have an infinite amount of choices to go through, but there's some that feel, for me at least, being in the records, that almost feel like your soul predetermined, right? Or maybe it's all happening right now. I know we've had many conversations about the free will and divine timing and all of that happening kind of simultaneously, right? But tapping in, knowing that the soul is ready to go through this process. And so, in the energetics of it, right, of how it all works, there is still mystery to it, right? But we're able to tap into a deeper understanding of, okay, I am getting this visual, this feeling, this inner knowing that I lived a lifetime in this specific era or this time, and this thing happened, and it's now creating this theme that's still present in my life today. I've witnessed it all throughout my life. It's creating kind of this cyclical journey, and until we bring awareness to the cyclical journey that has been happening through lifetimes, that inner awareness or that higher consciousness or higher awareness, then we get to go, okay, I'm stepping into my ability to be the creator of my reality while also co-creating with the divine. And I'm going to come into a process of alchemy within my being, because I'm ready to transform. I'm ready to evolve. I'm ready to go through this next level of expansion. And the soul knows, and the soul is ready as well, which is why I love working within the records, because it's really tapping into the multidimensionality of who you are in all of these different levels and aspects.
Wow, that's incredible. So how does one access the Akashic records then?
Yeah, so there's a number of different ways to access them. I was trained in a specific way by a teacher who I just hold so dear to my heart. Her name's Amy, and she taught it through the process of tapping into the crystalline energy, and that was super powerful to learn in that way. I've also read books and heard other teachers talking about accessing it through prayer. And so you can actually access it through prayer as well. I teach a specific modality that was downloaded to myself and my business partner who runs Akashic Academy with me. And we work specifically through accessing the Akashic records through sacred geometry. And so all of this overlaps and weaves together is it's all through frequency. It's all vibration. And so how do we tune into it? There are different pathways, right? Different teachers, different people who have worked within the Akashic Records have found their own pathways how to access it, and then taught others, which is super beautiful. And the thing that is the same in all of that is its frequency. It's just tuning to frequency, just as we would channel in any specific way, right? It's tuning your frequency to that of the tonality of the Akashic Record, so you can hear, so you can tap into that information. And there are specific, like you'd mentioned universal laws earlier, there are specific laws and rules and kind of regulations to follow while accessing the Akashic Records. So if you're interested in learning how to, I would really recommend, whether you're interested in coming to Akashic Academy or you find another modality or another teacher that you resonate more with, I just highly recommend that you find some sort of guide or mentor in that space, because there are so many layers and levels to not only learning how to tap into the Akashic Records, making sure that you're doing it safely, because that's something that's really important. And we've talked about that before, and doing this work and channeling in general is the safety part of that, making sure that you are tuning into the specific frequency and realm. We're working with the beings that are only working with your highest and best, and through the frequency of the purest frequency of light and unconditional love. And so making sure that you really know what you're doing when you're accessing this information, because as well, we never want to do more harm than good. And if you are tapping into past life experiences, right, there's trauma that's stored in there. And so you also want to make sure that you feel equipped in knowing how to not only how to access the information, but once you have access to it, it's like, what do I do with this? Right. And so, yeah, it's the easy answer, the simple answer to that is through frequency and vibration. It's just tuning yourself. How to actually go through that process is a little bit more of a complex answer, and would definitely take some training in doing so. But once you know the pathway, it's like it almost becomes like second nature, being able to tap into it. And I also say, if you're sitting here wondering, am I somebody that has the ability to access the Akashic Records? My answer is yes. Everybody has access to their own Akashic Records. And if you desire to ever become a practitioner, you only have access to somebody else's records if you have their permission. So that's one of the many kind of rules and regulations around that as well. And so yeah, if it's something that calls to you, I will say when it called to me, it was this kind of subtle, I kept hearing it. It was just coming at me from all angles and all ends. And when I finally said yes to diving into it, when I finally said yes to, okay, I'm really going to not only learn how to tap in, but really understand this and come into my own mastery with this modality, it changed everything for me in the most beautiful way. So if you're feeling called, answer the call, because you are capable, you are gifted. And that's a question that comes to me often of, well, what if I'm not gifted, or what if I'm not able to access them? But you do. And so yeah, it's a place to really believe in yourself in that aspect as well.
Well, that was actually my question for you, and you sort of answered it. And just to kind of reframe it, I think this is a question that a lot of people have. It's like, well, it sounds kind of hard. Like you're a very gifted channeler, and so it's like everybody could look at you and say, well, of course you can access it. Of course it was easy for you because you already have those gifts turned on, and it's widely available for you. And I think there's this place of maybe it's self-doubt, or maybe it just is a genuine lack of belief that this really is an easy thing to do for just anyone who has no background in channeling or tapping into higher dimensional realms, or listening to their guides, or tuning into frequency. It's like, oh yeah, you just tune into frequency. But for some people, they're like, they're hearing this and they're saying, what? that sounds really hard, and
Mhm.
so I just wanted to maybe just kind of relate, put a little bit of a relatability there, because I think that there's a pretty wide range of people that are really feeling that way.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you for mentioning that. And, I have no problem sharing some of my own personal experience with that. I will say that when I first started tapping in, I had a teacher and a mentor. Like I said, she was amazing. And her program was great. I went through it and I did not have confidence at all. At that time, maybe I was channeling without really realizing it, but I was that person that you had just explained. And I know maybe that's hard for people to kind of pinpoint now of where I'm at currently. But at that time, I really didn't believe in myself and I didn't feel like I was gifted or had the capability. I had always felt like called to learn more about these modalities, but I never thought it was going to fully be for me. In fact, I remember my first practice session that I ever did was on my partner at the time. And I remember at the end of the session, I ended up bawling my eyes out because I had so much anxiety and I wasn't getting a lot of information. I thought I wasn't doing it right. This isn't for me. I'm never going to be able to gain information in this way. And I had just had a full on breakdown in it because I just felt like I'm not good enough, right? That was my story at the time. I'm not good enough. This isn't for me. And so that's why I really want to just, express to all of you that if it resonates, if it interests you at all, that means it's for you. And to really trust that no matter where you are in your own spiral of your own evolution, that I find that our soul plants these little seeds, right? Our higher self goes, okay, I'm going to plop this in there for you to open up a little bit more, for you to want to go into self-discovery of what is this? What is here for me? What are the gifts that are waiting for me on the other side? And I will say that I truly believe that practicing, right? Like anything, if anyone picks up basketball for this first time or starts singing or playing an instrument, right? They're not, I mean, some people maybe are just like super talented, right? But for most of humanity, it takes effort and practice to learn a new skill. And I find that even tapping into our spiritual gifts, it's the remembering of a skill set that we most likely have had for many lifetimes, but there's a remembrance. And so that remembrance takes some practice. And the practice in that is just communing. It's the energetics. And we talk about this a lot on this podcast of coming into the circuitry, right? It's the more that you come into that circuitry and you just sit down and you breathe with it and you go through the process of opening your own records if it's something that you know how to do. Um, Over time, the 5+ years that I've been working in the Akashic Records, my channel has just blown wide open. It was not like this for me when I first started accessing the records, but I believe that that was the foundation for me to open up my channel so that I could start tapping into those higher aspects for myself and then inevitably hold space for others in that as well.
Mm. Yeah, I love that so much. And I think that does give a lot more relatability for people that are maybe having some of those doubts or questions or fears of, am I enough or can I do that? Just to hear just a very human story from someone who's clearly has some refinement around this particular topic. So thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah, of course.
I really want to know, and I know you said it's everything. So this might be a silly question, but it just feels like such a juicy one too at the same time, of like what information is contained within the records. I know you've shared a little bit that it's infinite and everything, and you kind of mentioned a little bit of like past lives and traumas and things like that. Can we maybe dive into that just a little bit more for people that are kind of curious of what you could really discover by using this modality?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, let's break it down because that is a lot, right? That is vast, but it is vast because it is everything. And so if we think of if you can think of it like this, if you had somebody following you around with a recorder or, a phone, your entire life from start to finish, everything is imprinted in, say, like a DVD, right? And then you have the movie of your life. That information is imprinted in the Akashic Records. And it's not only that, but it's every single lifetime that you've ever lived is within that space. And so people will come to me for an Akashic Record reading for so many different reasons, right? Like the intention, it's really, so this is how it works. The intention that somebody gives or shares in the beginning of the session, or the question that they have, is what's actually going to bring us down a specific pathway within the Akashic Records, because it is infinite. And so when you think of, right, energy really follows energy. Like, so the focus that you put on something is where that energy is really going to bring you to within the records. And so let me just think of some examples that have come up, right? Some real tangible things that you can bring this into your life would be relationships, right? I have people come to me of, I continue to call in unavailable partnerships, or, I have an amazing partner that comes into my life, and then all of a sudden I'm self-sabotaging, like all of these things that I thought I worked on, now they're just coming up in, kind of in these massive waves that almost feel a little overwhelming. Or something around, finances, right? Say lack and scarcity, maybe money comes in, but it never stays, right? And so it's kind of this feast or famine thing for them. And so we'll use that one specifically. So they come to the records, it's feast or famine in their business. They can't quite figure it out, right? There's maybe other people in their industry that it's more stable for them, kind of thing. And then we dive into their Akashic Records, right? And then we all of a sudden start to open up this flood of information around around their ancestry, and actually in the bloodline what was happening to their specific ancestors, where it was feast or famine for them. And or maybe there was a past life or something happened to them in the past that they had a very traumatic experience, or something that happened that just held a lot of weight, that imprinted that in their being, kind of thing, where it's either all or nothing for them. And so then that imprints into your cellular memory. It imprints into the DNA, it imprints into the bloodline. And that is what also, not only just, right, things that have happened in childhood, but these deeper aspects that'll start to wire certain neural pathways in the brain chemistry. And so we can go in and tap into specific things that have happened that are creating a theme or a loop or a belief system that is no longer serving them. And so that can be alchemized, that they can go through their own transformation in that, of bringing loving awareness to these different aspects. And a lot of the time, especially if it's something that's ancestral, it's really just bringing the awareness of, oh, this isn't even actually mine. I don't know how many times where I've seen like shackles, energetic shackles come off of somebody of, this isn't mine. I've been carrying all of this weight and it doesn't even belong to me. And in the releasing of that, in the alchemy of that, witnessing all of their ancestors just light up, like the weight, literally, it's giving them permission to let it go as well. And so I've had beautiful visions of like family trees illuminating after they put it down or the shackles come off. And yeah, it's just, it's hard to even pinpoint like what exactly, what we can tap into, because, by now I've probably done hundreds and hundreds, if not a thousand by now. And every session is so different. They're so different. And so that's the beautiful thing, is we never know what we're going to tap into when we get in there. It's such a loving place. Your guides are all there, um, creating the safest space for you to dive into the depths of meeting yourself on a soul level.
This is so good. This is so juicy. So you're just saying like creating this loving place, and you've shared before a little bit of where this place actually is. Like, where are the records actually, and who's there? And like, is there a gatekeeper? How do you get, how do you get in? Do you have to have a code? Like, maybe some of like those curiosities for those of us who kind of think in that kind of way.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So, the Akashic records reside in the seventh dimensional field. And so that's why it's a frequency, it's a tonality, right? We're here in the third dimension. And so it's all energetic. So we're having to tune ourselves to match that of the seventh dimensional frequency. And there is a gatekeeper there. And the gatekeeper is Metatron, or Archangel Metatron, as some of you may know of him. If you know anything about sacred geometry and Metatron's cube, that is, it's all housed within the records, and he is the gatekeeper because there are rules, there are laws, there are regulations, right? If we think of someone learning how to access that maybe didn't have the highest and best in humanity, and then they just go in there and see everyone's information and all of, things that would be, you watch those movies and it's like classified information kind of thing, right?
Mhm.
So there is a gatekeeper, and there are many beings that are there in support of this space to make sure that no one's going in there and creating any sort of havoc in there. And so something that I really learned, and something that's been passed on or channeled to me from Metatron himself, is, you know, the more that we can show that we can be responsible with these gifts and tapping in and accessing these very, very sacred spaces, the more that will be given to us as well. And it's not out of a needing to be good enough by any means. It's just, are we going to be responsible with the information? And what I mean by that, if you learn how to access the records, that you're not just knowingly going to go in and access the records of someone else knowing that you don't have their permission, kind of thing. And so it's not about needing to, like, be afraid or have any fear of, like, well, what if I make the wrong step in there, kind of thing, right? It's just, they're really there to be loving support systems and to teach you how to be in right reciprocity and in honor of the sacredness of the records themselves. And so it's not only just Metatron there, that is, he is the gatekeeper, but we have many, many guides. So the Ascended Masters, Archangels, our galactic family of light, past loved ones, healed ancient ancestors. These are all beings that are available to you within the Akashic records to assist you in accessing different parts of information, and also holding you and supporting you if you're moving through any kind of process within the Akashic records as well. And you can call in very specific guides, or you can just call in those that are in the space, that are really just holding the loving awareness in the space as well.
Well, thank you, Metatron. I mean, I just feel the need to just have some gratitude there, because when you really think about the level of badassery that needs to take place to be the gatekeeper for that, I mean, I'm sure you've got some pretty interesting characters coming up there trying to sneak a peek at some stuff, and not for the best interest of humanity or for specific souls. So it just feels really important to acknowledge all the beings that are there holding the integrity of that space. And so you're saying that resides on the seventh dimension. And my understanding is that a lot of these higher dimensional beings are maybe residing at much higher dimensional frequencies than seven. So am I understanding this correctly, that they're choosing to come into more density in order to be the gatekeeper for that space, or to show up when people need them in the seventh realm?
Yeah, so very similar to, say, us being here in the third dimension, right? We're calling in our guides, we're channeling, right? We're connecting with them. The Akashic Records is a really beautiful, I don't really know the way to put it, but kind of like middle ground, I guess you can say, right? Access point or checkpoint, right? Where we can then raise our frequency to go up to meet them, to hear them more clearly, to gain a little extra support than just calling them down here to the three-dimensional realm, where it can be a little bit harder to hear them, right? Because we are in the density and it is harder for them to come down into the density, into the three-dimensional realm. And so they're not always just hanging out in the Akashic records, right? And so that's why we have to share an invocation. And so that's calling them in, right? Asking them for their service, asking them for support in a very similar way if we're just channeling, right? And so creating an invocation when you're channeling, actually calling them in, because we are in a realm of free will. And so unless we call them in and ask them for support, I know, we're going to bring in DiYeena in a moment. I've heard DiYeena, even when we do like channelings and different activations in our online membership, she always says, if you want a little boost, ask for one while we're in the space. And if you don't want one, then that's okay. We can still be here in loving support. But if you want the boost in the space, then you have to ask for it. And so that's the way that I see that they are fully 100% on board to always coming and meeting you in the Akash to support you in whatever it is that you're desiring for support within that space. But they're not always just hanging out in there. And Metatron himself has shown me that because he is so infinite and and so vast, he can be right up in these other realms and always be a fractal of himself, can always be there present, being the gatekeeper as well. If he needs to be called in more in a more present way, then he can be called in that way to have more of him there. But he can be fractaled everywhere because of his mastery over his own multidimensionality.
That makes a lot of sense.
Mm.
I'm hoping it makes sense to our viewers and our listeners as well. So thank you for that kind of breakdown and understanding of how this is all working. And I just want to kind of back up a little bit, because we're making a lot of pretty big assumptions here. And the biggest one is that I'm really feeling into is really the naysayers and the skeptics of, like, come on, are the Akashic records even real? Like, are they a myth? Like, how do we even know? Do we know the origin story of where this all started or came about? And how do we even know if this is true or not?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great question, and I will say, even through my own experience, right? Like I was sharing in the beginning, I was having a really hard time figuring out, how do I access this? Like, am I capable? Is this even real? And am I really tapping into the seventh dimensional field? And, I'll say it in this way for those that are skeptic, right? Until you have your heart open to what is possible for you in this lifetime, I just feel like there's so much are going to pass people like that by. And I say that in a way of, if you are skeptic, which I think it's healthy to have a level of skepticism in any aspect of it, right? Of really tuning into, okay, what is true here, right? And what is my truth within this space as well. But I will say that there's so much magic from diving into your own experience and doing your own, not only, I was going to say research, but it's not even just that, doing your own exploration into, is what if there is something there for you, what if there is your gifts and power that you're being asked to tap into and unlock within yourself, and the ability to tune in and access this information and have a relationship with your guides. What if that is just right there for you, and all it's going to take is a little unlocking of your heart? And or maybe it's not real, right? And so you'll never know unless you go in and dive in for yourself, because you can hear somebody sharing about it, but until you experience it yourself, And I will say that that was the biggest unlocking for me. And I believe that's really truly what unlocked my channel in a bigger way, is diving into it, even though I had all of this doubt in myself and doubt of just self-doubt in general, and diving into that and saying, what if there are miracles within this space for me? Um, and what unlocked in that space is something beyond what I can even share with the human words and the expression through that. Something that else that I will also say in that is there's so many people, especially at this time, that are channeling within the Akashic records. And this is something like that we can look back in history of many, many, many people that have channeled through the Akashic records as well. We can look at, there's a few names are Helena Blavatsky, who started channeling in 1831. And this is something that she brought forward of the understanding of what she was calling it at that time were undestructible tablets of the astral light. And so she was tuning into light in the astral field that she was understanding was this infinite information, this storehouse of information that then opened up this whole wheelhouse of different understanding. And then all of a sudden, all of these different people all over the world started channeling around the same time frame. And I believe that it happened around that time. I've even heard DiYeena talk about this, that they have that the Pleiadians have been here for, I mean, she says thousands of years, right? Which I totally believe. And I do really believe that we've gone through a massive evolution in human consciousness over the last couple hundred years. And so through the elevation of our consciousness, more and more people were able to had the ability to start tapping into this field of information. And you can just go and Google. There is a list like this long of people who back in the 1800s were talk at the same time, before the internet, before cell phones, right, before TV, we're all channeling in this realm of information around the same time. And so as that just opened up, it really, the visual and the message that I've received from my own guides within this space is it really just took a collective of people to bring their awareness into that frequency, into that dimension, to then to start to unlock their own frequency to that then it opened up in the collective consciousness for our ability to tune in and to tap into that. Someone that's also coming to mind that I've read many books on as well is Edgar Casey. He's someone that had talked about the Akashic records lots, of going in and tapping into this other field. Now he accessed it, what he believed was through the dream space, but he still shared of it as being the Akashic records. And so many people through history, especially before the internet, that how could they have all been tapping into this very similar field of information, and a lot of innovation and a lot of things that have come through channeling in that way as well. And so it's just a fascinating space to be in. And it's fascinating to me because the more that we tap into this individually and as a collective, the more that is really starting to come alive within not only the record space, but we're going to talk about the living Ma in a little bit as well. We're going to bring in DiYeena, but this spiral that we're all on of information, of experiences, of life, we're all on this ever moving, ever shifting spiral of consciousness. And of course, that information is going to be stored somewhere, right? It's stored within our subconscious. It gets stored within our being. And so if we think of, I believe that, and we've talked about this before, about our DNA and how we only have two strands of DNA plugged in, but we're going from the double helix to, there's a lot that believe that we're about to plug in our fourth um, strand of DNA, and that we're eventually going up this spiral, plugging in 12, 13 strands of DNA. And so if we have the ability right now where we're at to store memory, information in our own being, in the density of this meat suit, of course, in the higher planes, these higher dimensional fields where the intelligence, the frequency, things are so fast. There's a technology that cannot even be understood with the human mind yet to this point. I believe that we're ever evolving up this spiral to really understand what all of this is. I don't know if we'll ever know fully what all of this is, but we're remembering. We're in the remembrance of it. And so of course there would be all of that would be stored somewhere. If it's stored here, it's got to be stored somewhere else as well.
I love that perspective of it has to be stored somewhere else. If we're able to hold it here in the density, then of course it's going to be reflected in the other realms as well, because it's all a hologram, right? Like these are holographic patterns of infinite consciousness, and this is the denser version where we get to actually see and experience that pattern. And so of course it would be like that, right? And I also love that piece around, if you're in the skepticism, like that is the frequency of the mind, and all it takes is that little shift of what if to drop into that heart space that is infinite, right? The mind, the frequency of the mind, the dimensionality of the mind has a cap on it, right? Whereas the heart is infinite. And that is the place that does tap us into the portal of all dimensional reality. And so I just love how even in that process of being a skeptic and then moving into that space of, what if, and just opening up that gateway, it does open up this portal in the heart, and it does allow you to just entertain possibility, right? Entertain the possibility of magic, entertain the possibility of this unseen world, that's just right here. So I really love that perspective so much. And I guess the last question I'll really have for you here is really just wanting to know a little bit more. You've already given some beautiful examples of clients moving through some really powerful moments and healing traumas and whatnot. But just can you go into some more of what you've witnessed in terms of how the Akashic Records can be helpful? Like what are the benefits of working with the Akashic Records?
Yeah, absolutely. And so let's see, where do I want to start with that? Um, well, I can tune into, a place that it's really helped me personally in my own journey. And I'll start with the physical body, right? My physical body. And I've had, many different modalities. Plant medicines help me a lot with that as well, and breath work. But the Akashic Records are this foundational tool that I continue to go back to dive into. Okay, what is the thing behind the thing? What is the root? And I will say that is one of the most powerful benefits of the Akashic Records is getting to the root of all things, because the initial spark of everything is stored there. And so we can get to the root of behind the thing that's behind either a health ailment, which I moved through a lot of physical things around my lungs. I suffered with asthma for many, many years, and I'm still walking through my journey with that. I have my ups and downs right now. Thankfully, I'm in a good place with it. But I've been able to continue to peel back the layers of the physicality, right? And they say that the physical body is the last place for anything to actually manifest through. If the physical body is lighting up for you, then it's really time to start paying attention to what it's telling you. And so, right, we can start there. And I think that's a place that many people maybe don't realize when we're talking about the energetics of all of these pieces of it really helps with the physical body. And so if you're moving through any physical issues with your body, right? You're having any sort of health issues, we can really tune into, okay, well, what is the root? Is there an emotional root? Is there something that happened in this lifetime or a past lifetime? That's something that can be super helpful. Um, you know, you're just sharing about really being in the mind, learning how to get into the heart. That's a place that it can be really helpful as well, because we have all of these subtle bodies, right? We have 7 subtle layers outside of physical form. So through the Akashic Records, we can actually, it's almost like if you've ever heard of parts work, which is something that they do in IFS training, which was something that was really fascinating to me, um, that I'm trying to think of the name. I think his name is Richard Schwartz. He talks about this actual therapy that he created, which was IFS, and the way that he talks about it in the book that he wrote is that he downloaded that form of therapy through the Akash, and that's actually something that he has written about in a book as well. And so we can maybe put some information about that down below. But the fascinating thing about that is there is a link to connecting into parts work within the Akashic Records as well. And so you can actually take, right, the subtle forms. So if we take the mind, right, the mental body, which is in the subtle form, we can actually allow ourselves to almost have a conversation with that part of self. Or like say, I bring you into a healing temple and you're just in a place where your mind has been scattered, right? We can actually bring that part of you forward and start asking it some questions, right? It's most likely that there are parts of you, whether it's the physical body, the mental body, the emotional body, the spiritual body, all of these different parts of you, that there's something that they're not being heard or seen or witnessed in. And so there's something there's an imbalance that's happening in these energetics. And so you can tune into that where, okay, well, what are the energetics? Maybe you're not listening to the physical body. Maybe you're in hyper masculine and you're just kind of in this grind mentality, and it's overworking the mind. It's overworking the physical body. Your emotional body is depleted because it's not getting the space and time to be heard, or the things that are coming up to be felt. And so that's where we can start working with the energetics of the subtle bodies and the physical bodies. And that can be helpful in so many different ways, right? If you're someone that's like, I'm just exhausted, I feel like I've hit a wall and I don't even know where to go. I don't even know what to ask. I don't even know where to start. I just feel like nothing's working, like that kind of thing. It can be so beneficial to tap into that. And then, like I was saying, right, we can go in and rewire neural pathways within the brain chemistry of energetically, of course, starting with the energetics, and creating a new system of firing and wiring these new belief systems. And it's bringing awareness. We cloak the conscious mind and we really bring the subconscious forward within that space. And we can tune into what are some of the hardwired belief systems that maybe the conscious mind is unable to see. And because we're operating in a higher dimensional field, the density is a little bit the word that's coming to mind is looser, right? It's like it's not this like really dense because we're tuning into these higher fields. And so it's a little easier to tap into the subconscious mind. And so things that have been buried, I mean, like buried, that it's like, okay, well, yeah, maybe I know what my money story is. Maybe I know why relationships haven't been working out for me, and or business stuff hasn't been exactly how I desire it to be. There could be some very, like I said, deeply buried belief systems in the subconscious that then we have the ability to go in and pull that forward and tune into what is the belief system here. And now, is that belief system connected to have you created an identity around that belief system? Have you created a persona around that belief system? Have you been wearing a mask maybe for years or lifetimes around that belief system? And so, and I can keep going and going and going. Like I said, it's so vast, but those are some of the things that we can really dive into in such a loving way of getting to, like I said, the spark of it all. And then we can flip it on the other side and go, and I kind of already said this of like, it's not always just about healing and getting to the root of maybe some traumatic things that have happened, but though clearing those things out of the way usually create room for the evolution or the next advancement of who you came to be, this next version of you, that who you came to be. But there's also a lot of unlocking spiritual gifts in that space, coming into the embodiment of higher self, connecting and communing with your guides, and yeah, tuning into like, what have I trained lifetimes for, and to really be here in this lifetime? Am I a healer? Am I a channeler? Am I a grid worker? Have I already done lifetimes of training in this that's just waiting in my DNA to awaken, just waiting for me to bring awareness to those pieces? And so those are just those are some of the things. Like I said, it's because it is so infinite. I could really keep going on that.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. We could really go for infinity here. So
Uh-huh.
it can really take us anywhere. But just to I love how you just gave so many different examples that really kind of round it out of just how vast of a tool this can be in your life when you really start to work with it, which is so powerful. And I can really see how in the beginning phases, it maybe does start with kind of releasing some of this density, and maybe looking at some of these threads that are maybe lifetimes old, or maybe not even ours, that are in the family lineage or the traumas or whatever these pieces might be, that we get to kind of unravel those parts and clean up a little bit in our house, so to speak. And then we get to really play, right? I'm really hearing that then it gets to be really a spiritual playground in the deepest honor, as you were saying, when it really get to understand like the depths of your soul and who you are and why you came. And it just, what a tool, what an amazing tool to be able to have something like this that we can really use to really unlock some of these pieces that maybe we have hunches here and there of like what we're good at, or what our gifts are, why we came, or what our purpose is, to really understand it from this multidimensional kind of more galactic viewpoint. It just, I can see this really clicking for a lot of people here, and how they can actually work with this to really show up in the deepest way of why they're here and what you're here to do. Like a lot of people that are listening on this podcast are rising leaders. You're here to really help in this transition into new earth. You wouldn't be listening otherwise, and so to really understand deeply, with like the biggest conviction and the clearest knowing of what it is that you've been training for, because a lot of the souls that are here right now literally have been training lifetimes for this particular lifetime. This is really a galactic union here on Earth right now, as we're moving into this transition into new Earth, and that's been channeled through both of us and through multiple places, even Gaia, which we're going to be releasing episode on her, whole series on her as well, going into her Akashic record. And so just like these places where this is just a powerful time to be alive. And we did come with so much purpose, and we came, all of us that are here as light workers on this planet, whether we're still awakening to that or we know that's where we're at, that is what we're here for. And so to have the clarity without any shadow of a doubt, to just be able to show up and have fun doing it. I mean, isn't that the dream for all of us here?
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a dream. And yeah, I can't wait to hear what DiYeena has to say as well. I would love to bring her in. I don't know if you want to do a little introduction in case anyone is new to us here.
Yeah, I'd love to. So for those who are new to this container, welcome. We're so glad you're here. And I am a trance channel, which means that, a conscious channel is different than trance channeling. So conscious channeling is, we're just having a conversation and I'm hearing or receiving or knowing information, just like a conversation is going right now. And I'm just here communicating with all of you. Trance channeling is a little bit different. So I'm taking a little bit of a step out of my body here to bring in DiYeena, the Pleiadian family, who is my guide, is my gatekeeper. It is an agreed upon relationship. And so that is a way that she comes in, and she's, I give her permission to really be in my body and to communicate the messages that she has here for humanity. So I'm really excited for this conversation, because I actually am still learning a lot about the living Ma. So these questions that I think Shylo's maybe has a few questions here for DiYeena around this topic and how it weaves into the Akashic Records story here. is going to be a lot of, I'm going to be curious to listen back to this episode to hear what she has to say. So that's another piece of trans channeling, how it's a little bit different, is I often don't remember a lot of the conversation either, because I am a little bit further back from my body. So I'll definitely be listening back on this one. So without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and just go right out, and we will put you in touch with the Pleiadians. Here we go. Greetings. This is DiYeena, you see, of the Pleiadian family. You see, here, you see, we love to say to bring the love, you see, and also we have to step on the earth a little bit. Here we have the drink from Ava here. Let us see where on the body we are. If anyone is new here, this is the common thing we like to do first and foremost, is to have a little sip, you see, to get in the circuitry, get in the rhythms. If you have a cup of tea, you can join in a little sip of water. You see that it allows the water, the interdimensional frequencies of the water, to carry us into circuitry, to carry us into a container together. So this is very nice, you see. We can tell you've been doing a lot of chatting, because this is getting a little cold, you see. We always know how long it's been by how warm the tea is, you see.
We have been doing a little chatting, yes. So we're excited to bring you in.
Well, it still tastes very good, you see. So it's not all lost, you see. We'll hold maybe, because it's very yummy, you see. We have the mushrooms again, you see. So we like it, you see. Well, how are we doing here? We are having an interesting conversation, discussion, you see, on the living ma. We really have not talked about the living ma too much, you see. Perhaps you are waiting for more the experts to come in and discuss, you see, perhaps.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
Yes, my dear. Well, we can let you know that we have a little bit minimum understanding, you see, what we'll say, you see, without poking too much, you see, because you two are both doing very well, you see. But there is you've not really asked us the questions, you see. You've not really asked us much to really understand, to really get the full idea of what it really is, you see. So this is really, we know you have some questions, but perhaps we would just start there of what it really is. Do you have that question first, or do you have a different question about living ma that you would like to ask first?
That's not the first question, but that should be the first question. So I would love for you. I would love for you to share on that, DiYeena.
Well, it is good that we have together then, you see, because perhaps together, you see, DiYeena can interview DiYeena perhaps a little bit, you see. We can see how that goes, you see. We are joking a lot. So those of you who are new, you'll get to know DiYeena very likes to crack the jokes a little bit, you see. So a little bit of rib. But we'll say living ma, you see, is a frequency of knowledge. You see, you could say similar to Akashic Record, you see, but what it is, you see, and this is perhaps a different way of even explaining what some would call the Akashic Record, you see, is the way that this is. You have to think about the coding of creation itself, you see, the coding of all of dimensionality in the moment of creation, you see, is all codes, you see. Even the way you think about your DNA as a human, you see, you have the 2 strands, perhaps the 12 strand, the 13 column, you see, however it is weaving together, you see, that it is all there. So this is a really important part, you see, that everything was, is, and will be, is always been, you see, in the frequency creation. The code is the overlay of all, you see. It is always in existence, always has been there. This does not mean that the code is always in experience, is always in illuminated, you see, by the consciousness itself, you see. But the potentiality for it to arise exists within the blueprint of the creation itself, you see. So we're not sure if that makes sense to you. Are you following so far?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Very good. So it is all possible, you see, and so all information has already existed. You see, this is very important because it flips it a little bit on its head, how you are talking about it, you see. All thoughts, all stories, all traumas, all experience, all of the things that you would say are stored in the Akashic Records, living ma, you see, are ultimately part of the codes that exist within creation. You see, they already were. They already were in existence as a possibility, you see. And then we have fractals in consciousness that choose to experience the frequency of that particular code, you see. So then you have the illumination and the playing out of that particular code by a particular fractal. And so that particular, that is illuminated within the design, so to speak, you see. So it is in that way that you could say that there is a record of it, because there is an illumination that happens because of it. And it is stored within the infinity of it. So you can always go back and look, oh yes, that is lit up over there, you see. And so there is a record for it, because there was a tension of consciousness placed by a particular fractal on that particular code of creation, you see. That was already there, you see. So it's almost like if you're dancing around a hopscotch, you see, and if you could imagine that every time you place your foot on one of these squares, it would light up, but you can skip a square if you like, not step on it. It will not light up, you see. It is like that. The squares are already there. The codes are already there, you see. What are we going to illuminate in consciousness? What are we going to play, you see? This is the free will, you see. So we are moving through the codes, through consciousness, you see, in infinity, you see, through the fractalization in the free will, you see. So you never know, you see. This is the fun part, you see. So you are always able to access the particularity of where we are in the spiral, you see. Spiral, just one word, you see. Pattern could be another word, you see. So it is a way of relating, you see, to the particularities of the codes of creation itself. Is this making sense to you, my dear?
Yes, I love how you phrased that, or how you just spoke of that, of the code. The code is already there, and the infinite, like everything already exists within this encoding. And so the way that I'm getting a visual is I'm seeing this code will say, it's in the flower of life, just overlapping and weaving into the infinite. And then as we choose a certain pathway, we choose to be in resonance with that specific code, it lights up that part of creation. And so it already exists. And so this is also assisting me in understanding a little bit deeper, a layer deeper of free will and the divine design. It's not so much that our free will, our choice, then lays out a divine design from that. It's the design is already there. We're just choosing where we're dancing, weaving, creating through the design.
Precisely. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So it is like that, you see, because what is, you see, and it is simply a matter of vibration and frequency, you see. So and this is how you weave together the sound frequency, you see, to choose your own adventure, so to speak, you see. So the light and the sound waves, you see, are creating your experience on the different dimensionalities of this infinity of patterning, you see. So it is simply about where you're placing the attention on what particular dimensionality or octave on the scale, so to speak, that is really choosing how this is all weaving together, you see, in your experience within each dimension, you see. So as we could give an example, you see, so perhaps some of your listeners are aware that we are living in parallel realities, you see, that there is already, this is a hot topic, so we'll use it, you see, like New Earth, you see, already thriving and existing, and you're all there, you see. Well, how come we're not experiencing it yet, you see? It's a frequency match, you see. So you are simply shifting your awareness, and frequency is hanging out on this particular dimensionality to play this out, you see. So this is where the focus and the energy is, and the attention, you see. You can shift just like that, you see. This is the free will choice, you see. And there is already a code of conscious collection of a choice point for humanity, for the consciousness within the evolutionary process. It's already coded into the creation, or already coded in the blueprint, to make a transition, you see, into a new frequency collectively, you see, because you can always, on an individual fractalization level, go play wherever you like to play, you see. We have many advanced souls who do it all the time, you see. We have many that in their dream world will go and play in all the different dimensions. You see, some will do it in their meditations, for example. Very possible, you see, but we're talking on a conscious collective level, you see, that these are coded moments, you see, in what you would consider your cycles, you see, of movement, you see, cycles of the orchestration, you see, the notes on the scale, the symphony, so to speak. You see, so we're just simply moving through along the pattern, you see. And this gets to be, there is still free will in it all, you see. So individuals can still choose where to go within that. You see, you don't have to go to New Earth and experience that. You can go somewhere else, you see. So there is still free will, even in those conscious collective moments of experience. You see, there is still fractalization and choice, you see. Is this making sense to you?
Yes, absolutely. A question that I do have in that, though, would be, what would then be the difference between the Akashic Records and the Living Ma? Or is there a difference?
This is more semantics, you see. And also a little bit the dimensionality and the access points, you see. So what you could say, Living Ma, this is very interesting, you see. So what you could say is Living Ma is really the Ma is the codes themselves, you see, the creation. You see, the Living Ma is the experience, you see, the lighting up. So the Living Ma would be synonymous with the Akashic Records in one sense of the word, you see. In another sense of the word, it is really a little bit of a different frequency, or like it's hard. It's so hard to put into the third dimension. Let me see how to do, you see, because it's going to miss it a little bit, you see. So we need to have a little bit caveat that you can all come up to higher dimensions at some point, and we'll have another conversation about this from a little bit more expanded awareness. But we will do our best here with this dimension to explain it in a way that maybe perhaps the limitations of the mind can quote unquote understand. But again, you're underneath the standing, you're underneath the awareness, you see. So it is in and of itself, even in the definition of the word, very limited, you see, in where we can go with this conversation. But what we could say is perhaps that might be helpful. It's that almost like different rooms, you see. Well, how can we have different rooms if it is infinite? Exactly. This is the point. It is hard to put into words, you see, how to have this conversation. But it is a little bit a different feeling, a little bit different frequency. It's almost like accessing through the different portals of existence, you see. So it's almost like you have the 0 point in the light and the 0 point in the darkness. You see, you can access through both ways, you see. Is this making sense to you?
Yes.
That particular point, you see, is that you have the nothing. You have the nothing in the light, you have the nothing in the dark, you see. They both take you to the same point in the spiral, or the same point in the infinity symbol, so to speak. They both have the same access point, you see. But the experience, it appears very different. One appears dark, one appears light, you see. Does it contain the same information? Well, yes, but it's a different angularity on it, you see. But it's hard to describe because it is still containing all the possibilities and all that is there, you see. So it is not like you have to go through one door or the other to have access to the story. But what is different is the perspective on the story. So this is a little bit hard to describe, but Living Ma is taking it from a little bit of a different spiral of how to describe. This is very challenging. You should give it a go, you see. But it is really like you are coming down from this other angularity, you see, where Akashic Record perhaps is coming off of this angularity, you see. And so from this angle, the same story you are seeing. Perhaps if there was an eclipse on the sun, for example, you see, it's still the same sun, but you are seeing it from one looks very different than if you were to go and look at it from the other side, you see. Something like that, where you have the same story, the same thing, but if you were to look at the two different sides, you might tell a different story, or you might tell a different version of the story, or a different aspect of the story that might have more highlight or more significance or more importance or more perspective of that particular angle. It's almost like if you were to hold a person and say, well, one side you are looking at the front of a person, you see the face, you see other side you're looking at their booty, you see. Well, that's a very interesting perspective. We'll have a lot to say about that, you see. So it is the same person, it's the same human, you see. But you're going to have a little bit of a different story, or perhaps a little bit of a different way of looking at it because of the perspective. Is this helping a little bit?
Yes, yeah, I'm understanding, I think, to the level of maybe the density of, because I'm understanding, and I also understand that it's hard to explain. But what I'm tuning into is that the Ma is the codes, and then it's the living Ma's, like what feels like the illumination, like the living, the actual like lived encoding is what it feels like. And then the Akashic records are also that, because it's information stored, yet it's all just looking at it through different angularity on a different place in the spiral. So it's the same but different, and hard to explain the differences in it. So I think that's probably the best way that I could explain it from that.
Yes, and it's also like if you were to take one example of your story of your life, you see something that happened in your life, you see something important, you see, or perhaps you know what would be a good example, you see, is perhaps your birthday, you see. You come around, you have this, your birthday, you see, you're a certain age, you see, you spiral around the circle, you come back to the same point, your birthday, but you're not in the same spot in the circle, you're spiraling up because now you're another quote unquote year older. This is again the limitations of the timeline here, but we'll play with it, you see. So you're moving upwards on the spiral, but you're accessing the similar point, but from a different perspective. So you might have, when you're a child having a birthday, very exciting, you see. Then you're perhaps 16, another excitement, you see. Then you have different points along the way. Then all of a sudden you get to a certain point along the spiral. Perhaps there's less excitement, you see. Then perhaps it gets to a little bit more refinement. And then there's a different perspective of the birthday, you see. So every part along the spiral, you have a different perspective on the same access point, you see. And this is a little bit the difference between the Akash and the Akashic records and the living Ma, you see, it is simply where on the pattern you are, what door you're going through on the pattern, you see. And so you are just looking at the different stories from a little bit different angle, you see. So not everyone is accessing the living Ma, you see. Akashic records was specifically doorway created for humanity, third dimensional humanity, to access it within the realms of the 13. So you've got the 7, and you see within the 13 dimensional blueprint, you see an access point for the infinity that was created through that particular angularity, so that anyone can access who has the heart intent, you see. And that is really the difference in the story here, is that it is a little bit more accessible. Now, does that mean that nobody can access the living Ma? No, it's the same kind of thing, you see. But there's a little bit more, we won't say rules or regulations, but we'll say that there's a little bit more of a frequency refinement that is necessary in order to access a living Ma, you see. And it just gives a little bit deeper of the perspective, or a little bit more broad perspective, almost like the eagle's eye perspective, you see, on the story. So you're just perhaps seeing a little bit more of the storyline, you see, if this is making sense to you.
Yes, no, that makes perfect sense. I like how you explained it in that way.
Great. We're sweating over here with that one. You see how to really talk about it. So we're glad that we hit it home finally. That's good.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much for
For
that.
that one. That was good. Okay.
Yes,
You ask your question. I will have my earth here.
amazing. Yeah, the next question that I had was, who is in or a part of the living Ma, as in what beings and how many beings?
These are good questions. Now you are getting it, you see. You got to ask the questions to get the answer, to get the perspective, you see. So now we have the understanding that the Ma, the codes, living Ma, is the experience of the codes, you see, the aliveness, the live story, you see, from the perspective of the particular multidimensionality, that particular eagle's eye view, you see. And so it is really held. It's so fascinating. You see, you have the Metatron as well, you see, holding, you see, but you also have many other ascended masters, you see, who are what you could say have mastered the level of multidimensionality, who have chosen to hold in the fractalization simply for the whole of it. You could say almost like a bodhisattva type of frequency, meaning they not completely tied into the earth realm, but more like for the all of it, you see, for the cosmic experience of it, you see. They have chosen not to just dissolve back into consciousness itself, you see. They want to keep the fractal because there's use in it, you see. It's useful to be in that frequency, to hold the angularity, to hold that particular version of consciousness, you see. So you have many, you see, that have, and this is not just going to be any old being, you see. So where you say like healed ancestors, so to speak, you see, this is not the level that you're going to find at the living Ma, you see. This is more of the angelic realm, more of your ascended masters, ones that have really mastered within all the dimensionality, you see. So they have come into the frequency of wholeness within all dimensionality, so that they can hold within all dimensionality, within the infinite realm of existence, you see. So in order to be a frequency match for the living Ma, you have to have had the multidimensionality of mastery, you see. So this is very interesting. We're going to jump a little bit here because how can we have, so we have the Ava here that is channeling, opening up to have DiYeena here, you see. And so we are, and so this is another place where you got it a little bit, the communication maybe not quite accurate, so we can have Ava refine it a little bit, you see. But we are not 13-dimensional beings, you see. This is really not the right way to talk about it, you see. These are dimensional beings that have mastered the multidimensionality of being, similar how you were talking, you see, of the Metatron, you see. How he's able to be in all these different infinities of existence, you see, because of the mastery, you see. So this is the level of frequency of the beings that are coming through, you see. Ava, as the frequency of that itself, you see, also comes in that frequency, you see. So there is a little bit of, it is an interesting thing because you have to have a density and experience, you see. So to put into a body, you see. Do not say that, oh, this is just, you have these beings that are quote unquote enlightened from birth. And we're not going to just put Ava up on the pedestal in the form of the third dimensional meat suit version here, you just say. But what we will say is that there is a frequency alignment, a soul alignment here that is master dimension, multidimensionality in so many places here. They're able to hold the frequency and also comes into the form to be a conduit for these high dimensional frequencies, so that there can be perspective on these eagle's eye viewpoint for what you would consider the living Ma, the records, you see, the information stored in the codes, you see. So these are beings here that really have the mastery, you see. So you could say, to bring the number, you see, this is really, because it's not quite that black and white, you see, because you have the fractalization of these frequencies of consciousness. So it is really, in one sense, you could say it is infinite, which would probably be the most accurate answer, if this is making sense to you.
Yes. Yeah, of course. Because everything is really infinite, but we want to, I find down here, because even one of the questions is, how long has it been here for? Well, I feel like in the humanness, we want to put boxes around time and limits when it's hard for us to understand infinite. And so I can also understand how there's sometimes there's a hard time to express the truth of what it is that you're really speaking on, in the understanding of the density of how our human mind processes and understands things as well. Because there is, I don't want to say a disconnect, but it's very limiting here to what it truly is.
Precisely, and this is another good example here. So you got Ava coming into the third dimension for this particular service. You have DiYeena coming into 13th dimension for this particular service. You see, both DiYeena and Ava, you see, much more, say, evolved, maybe not quite the right term, you see, but have much more mastery over the multidimensionality than 3 or 13, you see. So you cannot say this is a 13th dimensional being or Ava is a third dimensional being, you see. We're having these experiences for a particular angularity or viewpoint, you see. So DiYeena comes in to hold in the frequency of the 13 enough so that there can be a remembrance of activating the original human blueprint, you see, for this particular time in the history where we are coming into the reactivation remembrance of these original codes, you see. So it is helpful. We come because it is helpful, you see. Ava infinite as well, you see, but coming into the third dimension, you see, is helpful, you see, because how else are we going to have these infinite multidimensional masters coming into any kind of frequency that's going to be helpful, being able to actually give you words that can be heard by the ears, you see. Had to get very creative to do, you see. So this is a way that we were able to kind of work around how to really make it all happen, you see. So it takes all of these different layers, you see, to really get the vastness of the information that is here to really communicate to humanity at this time. Is this making sense to you?
Yes. No, it is making sense. Absolutely.
Very good.
Um,
This is very fun. This is a conversation that so many in this collective here that are supporting in this particular way, you see, very, very much is a crowd pleaser, we will say, you see, because this has been really wanting to come forward, you see, for a while now in a deeper way, you see. So this is good conversation, important.
Yes, very important. And just, Ava and I were speaking as well before you came in, DiYeena, we knew that we were going to learn so much in this episode as well. And so thank you just for sharing all of this. It is really important. And I can feel how even bringing the information, the codes of the living Ma is also it's expanding my awareness. It's expanding my consciousness. And so I can feel how it's this different perspective, how it's requiring us to be in more refinement to even hear or understand how the information is wanting to land in our being, that we're even being called to be more refined to receive what the living Ma truly is. And so I can feel that, even though there's not like a full understanding in the mind. And so I want to invite everyone into that. Can you feel how we're being asked to open a little, soften a little, raise our frequency a little to really be able to hear what is fully being said here?
Yes, and this is something that I know you have another question, but just
Yeah.
to really hone that in, you see, there's something the Magdalene, another one that comes through, you see, another one that's had the human meat suit, so to speak, but the more of your what you call the superstars in your planet, so to speak, you see. But she's had a very, very good practice that she brings forth to the humans, you see, about really being in the heart and really being in circuitry with whomever you're relating with. You're opening your heart and pretending, actually moving with the heart space as your listening ears and as your lips of moving, so that you are talking and listening through the heart space, you see, because this is the infinite place that can really understand, you see, that can really consume all of the frequency, that consume all of the information and understand it with easily, you see. If you are trying to get it all to fire up here, you're going to have a little bit of a headache, you see, honestly, you see. It is really going to be a tricky situation, you see. But as soon as you choose to just listen with the heart, you see, well, then there is a really not only a better place for understanding, but there's also a place of really being able to integrate the frequencies, which is really the whole point, you see, because this is an opportunity to really expand the bandwidth of the frequency, which is really why we are all here, you see, to really make this hop into new timeline for more fun, you see. This is going to be great, you see.
Beautiful. So good. So there's two questions here that are really similar. So I'm going to kind of piece them together. What is the living ma's relation to the earth? Is it only serving the earth? And how long has it been with the earth? And then just how is it here to serve just in general as well? And is that like what is the agenda behind this service?
Well, you see, there is no real agenda. You see, you could say, what is the agenda for creation? You see, what is the agenda for creator? Why have all of this? This is one of the biggest questions in the world ever. Why? What is all this for? You see. So this is really on the same lines. So okay, what for fun? You see, for the ability to perspect, to have the perspective. You see, to be able to have the experience. You see, so it is simply, again, the code of creation. It is simply the way that the blueprint was created. You see. So within this blueprint, you have all the planets, all the cosmos, all the star systems, all the worlds, all the universes, all of it, you see. So Earth, where you are choosing to perspect from, is the same relation that all is perspective from, you see. So living Ma, the Ma is really the blueprint of it all, and the living Ma is simply the information that has been chosen to have the awareness and they have a little dance. You see, this is just the places where fractals have been dancing with it all. You see, so in that particular way, Gaia herself been dancing with the fractal herself. You see, having her own experience. You see. All the fractals that are living on her body. You see, also choosing to have a little fractal of an experience. You see. You could almost look at it the same way that humans have microbes and parasites and different biome information going on within our bodies as well, you see. So there is this infinite layers of consciousness that are all having their own set experience, you see. And it is really simply just and record is really even not quite the right frequency to really describe how it is really to be in relation with it. It is really alive, you see, because we are alive, you see, and we are constantly in the free will moment to moment choice of how to play, you see. This is the beauty of it, you see. So when you start to recognize that nothing happened in the past, that there is no trauma that has happened in the past that simply needs to be healed in order for you to move forward. Instead, you're looking at it from a different angle, where every breath is a new opportunity to choose anew, you see. And that when you choose anew in a moment, you see, it changes the frequency of the pattern, changes the story itself, you see, changes what is alive, which is enlivened, you see. And so it is really much more living and breathing than we really give it all credit for, you see. You see, it does not negate any experience, you see, but it simply gives space for the breath of life to fully breathe through it all, you see. So the way that the living Ma relates to the earth itself, you see, it's always been just in the same way we started the conversation. Everything is, was, and will be. It's all now. It is all timeless. It's all in the infinite, you see. Earth, you could almost, I guess, if you want to think about it or have a box around it, you could think about Earth being a little dot within the code of creation, one little spark, you see, that gets lit up, you see, to have a fractal of experience, you see. And then there is living Ma that has information around that particular fractal's experiences, you see. And then all the fractals that we choose to engage in that particular way. So it is simply how we are dancing in consciousness is all.
Beautiful. I love that. How simply how we've been dancing in consciousness. It's
dancing, not been. This is this subtle but important distinction. How we are dancing in consciousness. This is the little clickings, you see, that shift everything, you see. Not how we have been. That is the Akashic record, you see, because it is really putting it into the story of the past, present, and future, the timelines, you see. But it is really, and it is helpful. We're not saying that this is not a good method, you see, because it is very, very helpful, you see. but it is using the frequency of time because it is a different access point, you see. So it is appearing more to have the formation of time, you see, but it is doing so in a way that allows the third dimension to have healing, to have the experiences of healing, to have the experiences of growth, to have these experiences. So it is very necessary. So we do not want to put it in any kind of negative light, because it's very, very important, you see. But to really understand from the different perspective how Living Ma would see the difference between how we all have been dancing versus how we are all dancing, you see. You see, it is much more in the moment, in the aliveness of now, you see. Is this making sense to you?
Yes, absolutely. It's the presence of the codes that are being lived and breathed right now in this moment.
Yes, which for some you could say that it feels much less helpful in that perspective. You see, it can be looked at through that lens as well. That the Living Ma would be much less helpful. You see, helpful in the sense that you can have the bird's eye perspective. But Akash can really give you a certain level of boots on the ground perspective that can really shift some things, you see. Not that the Living Ma doesn't have that angularity as well, you see, but it can be viewed as well. It's kind of like when you have that saying, well, nothing is real, you see. Everything is an illusion, you see. So what are we all doing here anyway? We're all one, or things like this, you see. You can shout out these lofty comments, you see, about oneness or different aspects of the angularity, which everything has truth, you see. But you cannot, anything time you hold and put a pin in whatever version of truth, well, then you've missed it, because truth is alive, you see, and infinite, you see. So you are simply looking at your truth through one particular angle and holding in it. Well, then all of a sudden it is not the full truth, because you are just looking at it through your little pin and holding it down, saying, this is my truth, this is the truth, you see. Perhaps you're holding in the pinpoint of we're all one, you see. Or this is all an illusion, you see. Or whatever the words are, you see. But it's just simply one angularity. So Living Ma just simply gives you a little bit broader perspective of it all. Whereas the Akasha gives kind of like almost just a nice, very broad perspective from a more helpful angle for the third dimension, you see. So it is just different angularities.
No, that makes a lot of sense, and that's super helpful. Okay, so the next question that I have is around the beings that are in the Living Ma and around the ones that have actually lived on Earth. And so if you can share which beings have lived on Earth and why they have come down to Earth or have lived experiences on Earth.
Well, this is very interesting. We have a lot of them perking up right now saying, oh, can we talk? Can we do it? Can we say the things, you see? And we will do our best here to be in honor of them all, you see. Wow, this is really powerful. So there are many, too many to name, you see. Because the way that this works here, again, we are infinite in our vastness, you see. And the fractalization comes through in different ways for different reasons in different timelines, you see. So what you could say is that all of them have had moments on the earth in certain timelines, you see, but not necessarily with names you would necessarily have in your history books or your storybooks, for example. You see, we have some, you see. You have your Jesus and your Magdalene, you have Mother Mary, you have St. Paul, you have Isis, you have Kuan Yin here, you have Hathor, you have different ones that have walked along the earth, you see, that are really here, you see. And there and more, you see, and more, you see. And what we will say is there are so many that do not necessarily have a life that is meant to be fancy, you see. It is about frequency. So they're coming to hold a particular vibration of frequency, and that is the point. So you have many that come in to hold in the frequency of vibration in order to, it ripples out again with all the dimensions. So having a little drop in one particular timeline, and then having another reference point on another timeline, all of these things are frequency reference points, you see, that then connect the dots, so to speak, you see, between all of the worlds, you see. And so it is simply the way that fractalization of consciousness is moving through the multidimensional experience to create the symphony of movement that allows for the particular desired response or particular desired energetics, you see. And this is both collective and individual. So you have the individuals choosing to have their individualized experience, you know, for the same that you and I come for particular timelines, particular soul frequencies, wanting to experience different things, go through healing, go through particular lessons, so to speak. These are not coming for lessons in healing, you see. They're coming to hold in the frequency, or to be to hold a particular role. This is why many of them you do have the in your storybooks. You have many of them because they were in the fancy limelight, so to speak, because it seemed very unusual at the time to have someone who had, as Ava would like to say to her son, you see, these are the ones that had not forgotten their magic, you see. They had not forgotten it. They had remembered, you see. So this is really the way that you can think about it, is these are simply fractals of consciousness that are choosing how much to fractal and when, in which particular timeline. And this is where it gets very interesting. You have certain souls in this particular frequency, in this particular dimension, in this particular timeline, who have chosen to fractal into many souls at this particular time, in many forms, you see. Magdalene, for example, is in very many of the women right now on your planet. You see, the frequency, you see, the soul frequency, for the particular purpose of coming back into the balance, the right relationship with the masculine and the feminine, both within the individualities of the souls themselves, but within the collective consciousness, so that we can come into the frequency of divine union, which you've talked about as the 13, you see, the ascension into the frequency of the 13, the wholeness within the form, that is going to allow the new earth experience, you see, that is the divine union, the experience, but that has to come from within the frequency, you see. So that is a little bit of a way of thinking about it, you see. And again, from the higher perspective, there is no past and present and future of how when did they come and what did they do. It's all now. It's all now, you see. So it is really the broadening of the understanding of how we actually are infinite, you see. So the frequency of Jesus, he's playing out in multiple timelines, you see, in multiple versions, sometimes as one fractal, you see, in others as many individualized particles of fractal for different purposes. And this is the what you were just speaking to with Metatron, you see, how he can call back more, you see, for a particular purpose when necessary, or be in more areas, you see, of the infinite. Because when you really understand and master multidimensionality, you realize that you literally are infinite. And when you begin to have a deeper awareness of where and how all of the individualization of fractal, how it is all playing out in all these different layers of consciousness, you see, within all of these infinite dimensions, you see, almost like a house of mirrors or something like that, you see, just continues to go on forever, you see. And so it takes a high level of mastery to come into this level of awareness of yourself, you see, of your own fractal and the power that every fractal has, you see. And so it is a little limited to say, well, which ones have been on the earth in a 3D meat suit in names that we would recognize, you see. Well, it's a very limited perspective, you see, because it is all much more vast than that, if that makes sense, my dear.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so my next question is, how are Ava and myself connected to the living Ma?
Oh, this is a good question, you see. So we've talked a little bit about Ava, you see. When you both are containing several fractals of beings that you could say are have mastery over this particular thing, you see. that you brought in some pieces just to kind of hold an anchor in the awareness, you see, and also be a little bit magnet points, you see, for this living ma frequency, you see. So it is really like that. So it is a little interesting because you both had your individual dances with it all, you see. So you have done a little bit more dancing in a little bit different realms, but then you have many places where you're dancing the same, you see. So the overlap is a really synergistic because the angularity is very similar, you see. The perspectives and the places that the two of you have magnetized together in frequency and consciousness allow for a similar perspective and angularity on the discussion, so it feels cohesive for the ones that come into your field, you see. It's not like you are saying one thing and she is saying another thing and they don't make sense, you see, or they feel like opposite things, you see. You are having a very similar angularity within this whole picture that allows for that particular way of communicating, which is very helpful for people, you see, because you're saying the same thing, sort of slightly different phrases and wording, but it's the same frequency. It's the same frequency. So it allows for everyone to really have a deeper understanding because they're hearing it two different ways, you see. They're hearing the same message two different ways. And sometimes that's all it takes, you see. So to say, again, we're trying to limit the infinite soul experience, fractalization of the soul into one storyline, you see. So again, what we'll say is that you are both infinite souls, you see, that are having the multidimensional experience, that are on your own journeys with that, you see. And that you both have the frequency capacity to be in the awareness and holding that frequency of the living ma, to be able to have that angularity of perspective when needed, when necessary, you see. It is simply a matter of understanding its use for and its purpose for, you see, and having the right relations with the circuitry, we will say, with the circuitry of the gatekeepers, you see, the frequency itself, you see, to being actually in the right energetics of it, to be able to work with it in the ways similar to how you work with the Akashic Records, you see. So it is a similar place. You have to understand the lay of the land, so to speak, the outline of the room. How is it looking, and where do we go, you see, and who do we talk to, and all the things. You see, it's not quite like that, but they're just trying to give you a little bit of a third dimensional understanding of it for your own selves, you see. So it is vast, you see, it is vast.
Beautiful. So I don't know if there's anything that you could maybe add more than what you just said in the perspective of then how you, DiYeena, are then connected to the living ma. Is there anything extra that you could say about that?
Yes, again, all is connected to the living ma, you see. All is connected, you see. Because again, the mass decodes, the living is the experience, it decodes, and all fractalization is experience, you see. The difference is in the evolution of the individual fractals that allows for the expansion of really experience, you see, having the expansion of the experience and the integration of the experience of this expansion to have the mastery over knowing how we are moving and playing in consciousness, to where you are doing it almost, you're doing it in your sleep, so to speak. Is effortless, you see. It is really, you just have you are in that full awareness of all of the different fractalizations and how it's moving through all the different layers of dimensionality, you see. So within that context, you see, have to understand that even the way that we put names, you see, on all of this, you see, or DiYeena or Ava or whatever, you see, puts boxes in this whole discussion, you see, puts them into to really, because it's really hard to discuss how we can have the fractalization that is infinite and another fractalization that is infinite, and all these fractalizations that are eternally infinite, you see, and have it all be one at the same time, and have that individual fractal have such complexity within the story, within the individuality of the stories, you see. So to say, oh, this is DiYeena, you see. Well, in one particular experience, we gave the name DiYeena, you see, of the stars. Why not? It's pretty, you see. She asked, how do you spell DiYeena? We do not know. You can spell however you like, you see. You can write it out for you in the Pleiadian form. We can do that, you see. Whatever you want to do in your world, you see. This is really just the imprints that we choose to, how we choose to perspect, you know, each of the ways that we're looking through the mirror, how we're looking through the glass, you see. And so it is really just such a vast conversation. It's so much bigger than the mind can even begin to comprehend, you see, in the ways that we want to put it in the box and understand souls and fractals, you see. It is a very dense and limited perspective of what you're able to perceive from this vantage point, you see. And there's nothing wrong with this vantage point. This is an important vantage point, you see. So we're not saying, oh, well, but we should go and try to have a different vantage point because we can't see everything. That is the whole point, you see. That is the whole point. So it is not something to go and change, you see. It is something to simply be at peace with what is, and simply be in awe of the vantage point that you have, you see. And to be in awe of the fact that it gets to be a mystery from this vantage point. That is the beauty. That is the beauty of the design, you see. And it is really, but it is really, the story is so much bigger, so much more vast, you see. And it does not get to stay and live in these layers of the way that we put it into little stamps of identity, you see, if this makes sense to you.
Yes, no, it does. And then the final question that I had was just more of that. So I don't know if that's actually going to be helpful, because I'm really hearing you of not putting it into a box, and then it is hard to explain in that. But I am just going to voice the last question just in case there's anything that you want to share around that. But I am really hearing you in what you're sharing around that piece as well. But the last question that we had for you is, are there members of the Galactic Federation that are also in the Living Ma? As we feel like the Galactic Federation is something that a lot of people are aware of, and maybe a little bit of a buzzword. And so giving them a perspective or understanding how maybe their view or how their perspective right now is tuning into the conversation we're having.
Yes, so we'll put it more, because again, the Living Ma perspective is, again, what we were saying before, bird's eye perspective, perhaps not so helpful in the third dimension, you see. So we can come down a little bit to a different angularity to talk about this, you see, because it is a little interesting. You see a little interesting conversation here. So you do have, in the sense of fractalized souls, you see, choosing to kind of come together in this group, you see. Different agendas within this group, you see. So it's interesting collaboration, you see. So yes, there are some within this particular group that are holding the frequency Living Ma, you see, because that would be necessary, you see. Many more that are not, you see, that are in other fractalizations of consciousness, different fractalization of experience, different fractalization of frequency. Does not mean right or wrong, good or bad. You see, just different. You see, just another angularity of perspective. You see, so you have many from different star systems, many from all over, coming in to share their 2 cents, so to speak, to give their angularity on the situation, you see, on the collective situation at hand, you see. So it is simply, there are some beings, we will say, 2 primary in the sense of what you are talking about, 2 primary, you see. But what we'll say here is that there are many more that are kind of along the outskirts, you see, that are there holding frequency, you see. But it is really interesting in that particular way, because everyone's like, oh, Galactic Federation must be all the good guys, right? You see, it is not so black and white like that, you see, because again, you're bringing together. It's like you would bring together everyone to a Thanksgiving dinner, your whole family, perhaps many miles apart. You see many different experiences. You maybe don't have all the best relationships or all on the same wavelength. Maybe you have for Ava, for example, she had a phase of very, very intense raw food veganism. You see, how does that work when you have the turkeys and all the other things on the table? You see, and everyone wanting to know what you're going to eat. You see, some years she just drank her green juice, sippy, sippy, sip. You see, and everyone asking, "What the heck are you doing for this Thanksgiving? What are you doing? You're not eating anything." You see. And so it is a very silly example, you see, but what we're really saying is that it is really everyone comes with their own perspective, viewpoint, and fractalization of consciousness of what they're here for, you see. And so everyone is coming with their purpose, you see. And there are some purposes that are a little bit more dense, you see, or what you could consider maybe less helpful, if you want to say it like that, but it is helpful really probably the most, because it is really the darker frequencies that really get the light beings to pay attention sometimes, you see, to really get our act together, you see, in certain ways, you see. So it is all necessary. It is all important, you see, but it is a collaboration of very, very many souls from different frequencies that are coming to try to do what they're trying to do. Everyone doing a little something different, you see, but mainly just in the at least a bigger interest of at least making sure that we do not blow things up beyond repair, you see, kind of thing.
Beautiful. I love that answer. Thank you for diving a little bit deeper on that, DiYeena. That was everything that I had to ask of the Living Ma, and I loved how you weaved it in to the Akashic Records as well, and just give us a little bit of a deeper understanding of that. Is there anything else that you want to share with everyone before we go ahead and close up this episode today?
Oh, this is very good, you see. So what we'll say is to really do your best, to let go the mind's need to understand so much, and to really open up your heart space to be the understander, to really be be curious about what it could look like in your life, to work more operate from your heart space entirely, you see, because you do have a brain there. You can actually do it, you see. It actually works much better, you see. So just start to play around with just letting yourself be in the heart circuitry as you are asking questions, having conversations, pondering life, just anything that you are doing. Bring it down to the heart. You can still do the thinking, but have the circuitry in the heart space. And notice the difference, you see. Notice the quality of the conversation or the inquiry, you see. The quality will be more expansive, will be more we'll say harmonious, but really more vast, you see, more in a way that is really in resonance, you see. And really it just is a really nice way to really be in the frequency, and it's really aligned with your design as a human, you see. It is aligned with the design. It's when you are beginning to open up this circuitry of the heart, and you are beginning to actually talk and listen from this space more. This is a way to really turn on your superpowers. We were talking about how these are descended masters who do not forget about their magic when they were in the density. Well, this is how you turn on your magic, you see. How you recognize, how you remember to be in all the frequencies of dimensionality, even in the density, you see. It's all the keys, the secrets reside within your heart space. So do not overlook it, you see. Spend more time there, you see. See what resides there and what unlockings might be there for you. We will send a blessing from all of you from the Pleiadians for you to be activated in your heart frequency, that you may be in the frequency of love, you may be in the frequency of joy, that you may be in the frequency of peace, and that you may really explore these conversations and these mysteries of the universe through the frequency of the heart, so that you can really be in the infinite possibility. Blessings from the Pleiadians.
Thank you so much, DiYeena, and the entire Living Ma Collective for being here with us today. So grateful, sending many, many, many blessings in return. And thank you, Ava, for being back here in the space with all of us today. It was such a powerful episode. I'm so grateful to be here in this space with you and DiYeena and the Living Ma. Is there anything that you want to share before we go ahead and close up?
Wow, I can just feel the power in this episode just by how much I'm buzzing in my body right now. And so I just trust that this message was exactly what you needed to hear today. So thank you for being here.
Beautiful. And if this episode resonated with you, please like it and subscribe so we can continue to bring more of this content and these conversations to you so we can continue to rise together on this ascension journey.
We'll see you next episode.
Bye, everyone.